Hello and welcome to the Cinemo CES 2026 panel on how faster development cycles can benefit more than your bottom line. My name is Wilford and I'm the Senior Research Director for Automotive at Omdia. And I'll be your moderator for today's discussion. The automotive industry is experiencing a fundamental transformation. Development cycles that once spent years are now measured in months or even weeks. The acceleration isn't just about speed. It's about survival in an era where expectations are shaped by fast-moving consumer ecosystems, where over-the-air updates are becoming standard, where the lines between automotive and technology companies continues to blur. We're very pleased to be joined by 4 experts in the industry. I'll ask them to introduce themselves.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Patrick with AWS, Amazon Web Services, working in the SDV space, formerly with a ton of different OEMs, so an automotive veteran, I'd say.
Great, thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Abe Silhan. I'm with Cinemo. I'm the Portfolio Management Director and we're dealing with infotainment solutions for the vehicle and the automotive industry. Thank you.
Good afternoon everyone. My name is Santosh Jogi. I'm with Ford Motor Company. I'm responsible for architecture and systems engineering of our vehicle software to make it follow a platform strategy, and I'm really happy to be here and contribute, hopefully.
Fantastic.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Tamim Masfour. I am professor at the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology, and I'm working on humanoid robotics.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So, Santosh, I'm going to start with you, if I may. Development cycles have shortened in automotive, particularly for sort of in-vehicle software and digital experiences. How fast is fast today, and what is driving this acceleration?
How fast has probably got different benchmarks around the globe.
Sure.
We know that there are certainly OEMs that have highly rapid development cycles, and we're certainly striving to be one of those. I would say, it depends, right? It depends on if it's an all-new feature, if it's an adaptation or an iteration of a feature, or if it's a response to an in-field issue, obviously. So responses to in-field issues, that turnaround can be, a matter of days. I would say, from what I see, we can see a relatively impactful feature go from sort of definition by one of my colleagues in the audience to being in getting ready for production, maybe within a quarter or two. Okay. And so I think we're constantly challenging that, and we're constantly looking at how do we take out delays in that, or how do we shorten, how do we improve our engineering processes, and that's a big focus for us.
Sure. Yeah. Are you nearing sort of the practical limit of how fast we can go safely, or do you think there's still some air to be taken out of that particular time?
I think there's still time that can be taken out. Yeah, for sure, safety is a huge requirement for us, right? It's not trivial development. We have a lot of verification and validation to do before we can put it onto vehicles. But there are constantly evolving strategies and techniques and technology to help us do that. And we're certainly looking to harness it. We've seen some amazing stuff here at CES this year, stuff that really makes you take a step back and think about how do we do product development? Are there ways we can leverage this revolution with AI in a better way? We're finding lots of areas where we can do that. I know you'll touch on that later.
Absolutely. Abe, from a platform supplier's perspective, okay, what requirements need to be in place to sort of enable that kind of speed, to give people, right, the gas they need to go at the speed they want to go at? And how fast can that development cycle be, given the tools that you can give people?
Right, it's a great question, and I would like to start with basically the speed. Because what we are seeing is a very fragmented industry. You have all sorts of players that have different levels of adoptions of technologies and trends. So it really varies. It varies a lot. What I can certainly say is we used to be doing infotainment projects taking 16 plus months. And over the past 2 years, that has been dramatically reducing to 6 months, 4 months, and we even went as fast as under 6 weeks for the latest project. So that's truly amazing. And what's basically happening is I think there are really challenges, that the industry is going through. You have also economical challenges, political situations. So decisions are happening kind of later in the process, yet production dates, budgets, promotional plans, they don't change. So you have to deliver faster, and to get that happening, what we found out really being efficient is standardizing your products, standardizing your solutions, reusing as much as you can. And lately, you have OSs that allow you to do that, where you can kind of reuse more easily across OS versions, across hardware. So we're really taking advantage of such type of opportunities. And obviously, as you can do more, you can do faster, you're also reducing the number of players involved in a project. And less players for, let's say an OEM means also less people to manage, less administrative processes, and that is kind of helping accelerate as well. So it's an incredible number of, I think, benefits that we can take profit of, if you will.
It sounds like some of the things that are enabling that speed are a natural gravity towards creating standard products or sort of standard processes.
Absolutely.
Often things that sort of we serve our customers, we find that they keep coming back to these things, so we can save time by packaging that together and making that available to people when they need it.
Absolutely, absolutely. As we talk to many players in the industry, you can really see a big trend in those suppliers trying to figuring out how their existing tech stack can be packaged, how it can be productized to kind of be reused, so that you end up with building blocks that you only need to stack together instead of kind of rebuilding from scratch. And I think this is a really very successful strategy to accelerate, indeed.
We're dancing a little bit around shift left and extend right, and weirdly, I think we have someone here who can speak a little about from a cloud and tooling.
Weirdly, right?
Weirdly, I mean, why would that just sort of come up? What has changed from your perspective to make this possible?
Maybe let me comment on what the two others just said. So standardization, I totally agree with that, because the standards are needed to, for example, put things into the cloud for testing, for development, right? And Santosh, as you said, these vehicle development projects are also, I think, like the there's a German word called Modellpflege, but I don't know what they like the. Yeah, well, let's say just the next model of the vehicle. The more standards you have between the vehicles, the more standards you have between the processes, the easier it becomes for you to build upon, right? And you're basically saying the same.
Yeah.
And for us, it's exactly the same as well. So if we want to, for example, help you to virtualize your electronic control units in the cloud, then do the testing there, the more standards, like VirtIO, for example, for virtualized interfaces are used, the easier it becomes, because then we become just another ECU, another piece of hardware for you that you can develop on, and then take your stack and deploy it onto your real hardware. And to your question, what has changed is over the course of the last few years, this is exactly what we're seeing customers doing. So they standardize on the interfaces. That allows them to build the stack upwards from these interfaces in basically a stable fashion, stable in the terms that they don't have to build for the cloud ones and then for the vehicle ones and test independently. No, they test the exact same software components in the cloud as they do also later in the vehicle. And that then means, well, you can take your stack, you can basically, you said shift left, right? You can take 80%, we've seen up to 80%, I have to say, of the workload shifted left, so done in the cloud, and then only another 10, maybe 8, 10, 12, somewhere around this percent on hill benches, and then on road tests, which right now you typically suffering from scarce resources in terms of hill benches, so you can't actually run all the tests that you wanted. And then, of course, also allows to stabilize the software earlier, and at the end of the day, deliver higher quality software. I think, also based on my own experience in the automotive industry, that's a huge shift.
Yeah.
If you enable testing to be done easily, if you make it sort of trivial to test, you can test thoroughly, you can test completely and not lose time, right? If you make testing difficult, people will begin to cut corners and have to prioritize. I think if you make testing simple, and if you can do it in the cloud, That there's no limit to the amount of testing you can do fundamentally, is there?
Well, there is a limit.
Well,
the limit is the things that we cannot do in the cloud are, for example, your proprietary CAN controllers, stuff like this, right?
Sure.
Of course, we don't have that. But a majority of the stack we can test in the cloud, and I think, yes, making the testing itself easy, and we'll probably get to this as well, using AI to help making this testing easy is one big step, but then deriving a test automation from this and basically integrating with your CI/CD pipelines. That is the biggest shift. Because right now, the CI/CD breaks the moment you want to test on a bench, the moment you want to test in a car, right? You have to go to the bench, you have to go to the car. With cloud-based testing, you don't have to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, just to add to that, I mean, and we see, you know, in the industry and in the technology providers who help us with testing environments, tools, this is well recognized, just like AWS, right? It's recognized that the next level is achieved by really understanding how these things automate. How do you flow development? Because it's not just like how do we shorten our testing time or increase testing or shift. If we can test earlier, then we integrate testing into our development. Then this is the very idea of test-driven development. Then we fundamentally engineer better features, right? We discover through testing
Fewer
higher
regressions.
value, fewer regressions,
Right.
right? And that's a lot of value.
Dan, every discussion I've had at this CES with an automotive company, with an automotive supplier, has also been about robotics. And I find that crossover amazing and a huge leap from even just a few years ago. If automotive could adopt just one robotics principle, simulation-driven iteration or modular middleware, to accelerate development, what would deliver the biggest impact from your perspective?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of parallelisms between automotive and robotics because we are trying to solve the same problems. So, I mean, we are developing machines which would interpret situations, make decisions, and take actions. And as mentioned, in order to accelerate development, and in particular robotics is also very expensive, you know, because we have to develop things and test it on real machines. Simulation is one of the things, and digital twins, what people use in robotics, what we are using in robotics, because you can actually explore situations, you can identify edge cases, failure modes, and variations which are maybe dangerous and too expensive to test physically. Yeah, I think this is what you are doing in automotive too, but I think simulation, in particular, what we need in robotics, simulation cannot solve all problems based on syntactic data. Would like to use simulation in order to improve learning through billions of real-world interactions. Data collected really from real-world interactions so that you can refine your models, you can deploy your models, validate your models, and iterate. And I think this is the cycle what should be followed both in automotive but also in robotics. And I think in automotive, the tools and the infrastructures what you have for the development and for the testing are far more advanced than what we have in robotics. We don't have this level of standardization in robotics yet, at least in humanoid robotics. I'm not talking about industrial robotics. Yeah, and I think this is one of the big things what both disciplines can benefit from each other.
Excellent. Move on a little bit to the next point. I want to discuss a little bit how we leverage Android, what we'll call the Android opportunity.
Right.
Android Automotive is for the software-defined era, often described as more than just an operating system, but more as a platform. It scales with AI, opens the door to some developers. Patrick, from your perspective, how does this platform approach enable faster development, innovation, and sustainability, without also forcing OEMs into a one-size-fits-all experience?
I think the way Android started, of course, is that allowed developers to develop their applications, right, on top of a standard set of interfaces. Look at the watches, for example. When the watches came out, they had what, like, I don't know the exact number, but let it be 15 APIs or something. It was very little. But at least you could send notifications, stuff like this, right? So a limited set of APIs allowed people to build applications and build rich customer experiences. And then Android expanded from there, all the way to then at some point also going back to the standardization that we talked about earlier, letting people abstract the underlying hardware away and not build an Android for every single hardware that they're deploying onto, but rather, use virtualized interfaces to abstract. And Android helped a lot in this space. So without the push to Vert.io in this particular case of AGL and as well Android, we probably wouldn't be where we are today with the opportunities to automate. And I'm a little bit curious how that looks like in robotics now that I hear about. Yeah. It's an interesting field to explore. I would like to follow up on this because I think there must be a lot of opportunity given that, as you said, robots, cars, they are interacting with the physical world, right?
Yeah.
And I think there will be a lot of similarities.
And you have an advantage actually in automotive because you have millions of vehicles moving around, and it should be possible to really collect this data of all these vehicles. The real world data, I know it's not so easy, and due to many aspects, competition and so on, and regulations. But this is the right way. We need real world data, interaction data, and in automotive, you had the advantage compared to robotics that you have millions of vehicles moving around and generating real world data compared to maybe thousands of robots. Yeah.
But coming back to what Android did for the automotive world and also for the mobile first, they did a lot for the mobile world first, yes. But now also for automotive, is there nothing like this in robotics where people huddle together and start building the robots OS?
I mean, of course, there's the so-called robot operating system, ROS, but there is no initiative. This is only pure software. But robotics is not only software. Robotics is actually the integration of software and hardware. And so far, there is no single initiative for example, standardization in humanoid robotics or medical robotics or other area of robotics. And this is something what we are missing in robotics actually compared to automotive, where you have more standardized workflows and tools and development infrastructure in a unified way compared to, for example, robotics. Yeah. Of course, robotics is more difficult than automotive because we are dealing even maybe a simple industrial robot with higher number of degrees of freedom compared to what you are dealing with.
I wouldn't be surprised at all to see something like a robotics-grade Linux or an Android robotic operating system. I think that's a natural offshoot for branch for down the line. I think it'd be necessary as well with the way that robots and automotive will have to interact and have to be able to share spaces in some cases.
Yeah.
Santosh, from the perspective of like a shared platform, how do you deal with preserving brand identity and sort of differentiated user experiences within something like Android Automotive?
I think there's ample opportunity. Just piggybacking on what Patrick said, Android has been such a big thing for automotive because it not only brought standardization and ready-to-use capability, but it enabled an ecosystem to build around it. And that ecosystem exponentially drives that platform, but it drives the maturity of the platform. It increases the exposure to different scenarios, and so you benefit from all of that. And what that also delivers is it delivers a growing level of capability, so you can have this common platform, right? And the layers where you can adapt those. Right. And that adaptation to, let's say, address a specific brand identity, that adaptation also requires capability to support, right? and how do you do it with performance, right? How do you let's say give a cockpit experience that is themed around a certain brand, but do it in a way that is high performance, right? That is robust, that is that delivers, that delights our customers. Well, to do that is not easy, right?
Sure.
But if you can rely on a platform that has already solved that, if you can have an ecosystem of folks who can help you with that, then you can get to those, those differentiated solutions that address your brands independently in an effective way. And we have that at Ford. I mean, if any folks have experienced, for example, like the Lincoln Navigator, right, and the Ford Expedition, right, there's common vehicle platforms. We share a lot of the same software, the same systems, but we have very specific and tailored experiences, let's say just in lighting, that have an impact. People like that, right? But we're delivering that with a large degree of commonality with platforms, and Android fits that same mold.
That makes perfect sense. You differentiate where it's possibly going to produce revenue.
Yeah, that's right.
And if it doesn't, then don't differentiate, right?
And it's very important to go back to your first question about how long does it take, what does fast look like? Right. We have to be very responsive to the industry, right? We have to be very responsive to what customers are valuing. We have to even get ahead of that, right? And deliver an experience that might surprise, and it might drive some brand affinity, and being able to leverage platforms and the ecosystem and all the tools and folks who know how to do it, and that is a cornerstone of being able to go fast.
Fantastic. Abe, from a platform supplier's perspective, how do these shared technologies actually change development and innovation speed in practice? And where does differentiation in your offering still live?
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to piggyback on what Santosh actually said. Android really has this layer-based approach, and one more thing that we can mention is the hardware abstraction, that you have in Android. So what you actually can do in Android is kind of deliver the same code base regardless of the SoC, the boards. You can also deliver it regardless of the OS version. And so with that, you have the possibility to standardize even more your product and your deliverables. And so that's a great opportunity, which you can extend, as Santosh said, also on the upper layers, which are basically the business logic and, if you will, application layer and UI layer. So you can really start to sort of layerize entirely your offering, ensuring that brands and OEMs have their personal identity. Your code base is highly optimized and highly standardized and reused across platforms, across OSs, across versions, and eventually across customers when you manage to productize all of that. So that's really how we're taking advantage of that, ensuring that we can differentiate ourselves with offering a very robust production, proven software that has been on the road many times, yet that appears very customized to brands and their user experience. So that's one thing that we do. The other, I think, important approach we take is we try to do kind of near certified, near production ready products, in the sense that we try to package everything in a way that very minimal changes are required at the end. And this basically allows you to deliver products that user experience teams can adapt, but with very minor changes, because we've been working with them and based on their feedback to deliver these, I would say, near-ready products. And lastly, because you can do all of that so fast, you can also benefit from faster feedback from customer. And it's a series of benefits that allow you to accelerate. And I think the last thing to mention is a lot of the SDV, paradigm nowadays is build on top of Android. So it's kind of using the APIs that are available. You have possibilities to virtualize all of that. And so I think this is the next opportunity you can see in Android, your ability to virtualize a lot and kind of reuse all of these opportunities yet in a cloud-based environment where hardware shipment doesn't exist anymore, where, you know, a bench which would have been available for one person is now available to, you know, your entire team. And so I think there are still many benefits ahead of us.
Absolutely. Let's stay talking about software-defined architectures beyond just software-defined vehicles. And Tamim, with cloud-based developments in particular, simulation and digital twin tools are being used to develop, test, and validate long before a physical robot is built. How can we use approaches like that without also sacrificing safety or robustness or trust?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a very, very interesting question actually, and a very hard question.
Good.
So at the same time, I mean, we cannot ignore recent developments in AI actually, and this is something what's accelerating many things, not only in robotics, but I think also in automotive. And my opinion is, as I mentioned, actually the systems should be able to learn continuously from real world interactions. And of course the data what we use or what we get from these real world interaction must be systematically and continuously validated. And I think trust can only be achieved through this systematic validation in any architecture, whether it's AI-based continuous learning architecture or classical architecture. So systematic continuous validation is crucial and important in this learn, refine model, deploy, and iterate.
So Patrick, how do virtualization and things like CI/CD pipelines change how fast teams can build, test, and deploy?
I would even start earlier in the process because having a CI/CD and then, you know, automating everything is great, but the first thing that you want to automate is giving the developer teams or the designer teams or whoever persona that is that you're building for, giving them an environment that they can rely on. And the environment can be as simple, in quotation marks, as giving them like the Windows desktop in the cloud, for example, that they spin up in the morning and they find the exact same environment every single day when they log in. They have access to the data right away, right? You said about huge amounts of data. If they don't have to leave the cloud, for example, they can work on the data right in the cloud. This is already a huge advantage. But then if you take those environments and connect them to the virtual targets that you mentioned just now, then all of a sudden you have a very similar situation as if you were sitting in the car and interfacing with the real hardware. Because the interfaces that you're using, again, for Android would be ADB, for example, predominantly, right? Yeah. And there are other interfaces too, but ADB predominantly. You would have the same user or developer, designer, whatever persona experience in the cloud that you would have in the car. That's a big one already. Because at that moment, then, they can start building the tests out and like the highest degree of automation with this target in the cloud already that never has to leave the cloud, and then implement it with their existing CI/CD flows with, you know, whatever CI/CD, GitLab, GitHub, whatever you decide to do, right? Mm-hmm. And using the same targets that they developed against also for automation. And then, of course, taking out of their development chain, of their build pipeline at the end of the day, taking the artifacts and automatically deploy them into several targets, giving those same personas that I talked about in the beginning access to different versions of these targets. Let's say there's one for the American market, maybe there's one for the Japanese market, maybe there's one for the European market, right? Of the same infotainment system, or the same ADAS system, or the same power controller, whatever it is, it can all be in the cloud and readily accessible and scalable, right? And that is where you can then build your automation, the CI/CD that you just mentioned, on top of. Sorry for the detour, but I think I needed to paint a complete picture, right? So it doesn't start or stop just with CI/CD, but there's so much more to it, and you know the cloud allows you to scale this globally. You know, I have been on projects actually where we had people working in India, in the US, and Germany, and Japan on the exact same project. And we were actually just able to say, well, I have that bug on this target, log in here and you will see it.
Yeah.
Try to do that with a bench. But of course, still you need the benches and still you need the road test, and we will not, I personally believe we'll never get to a point where we can just remove them entirely from the chain. You know, but
You can optimize their use.
we can optimize.
Yeah.
We can optimize their use. Exactly.
So we're under 9 minutes and we haven't yet discussed AI, and I'm afraid CES is actually going to pull my badge if we don't focus on AI for at least one full question. I'll never be invited back. Taman, in robotics, AI has long been used in the development process itself. How should Automotive think about AI as a co-developer and not just a feature?
Yeah, it's not a feature, yeah. So it's actually the engine for this continuous learning. Actually, AI will decide actually who will be the winner in the future, who will be able to deliver as fast as possible, and therefore it's very, very important that companies like you develop their AI infrastructures actually for this continuous learning, what I mentioned before, from real world data. This means infrastructure which contain, for example, data annotation pipelines, which contain basic foundation models, what you would use in any application or for any product, so that you don't start from the scratch every time and you don't reinvent the wheels again and again. And therefore, it's really very, very important also to invest in these tools and infrastructures, because this is crucial and important for the success of any organization. If you don't invest, if your metric is only speed, then on a long term, actually, you will not be the winner.
Yeah, of course.
So this is very, very important, because the development of these tools or AI infrastructures, what I call facilitate faster onboarding on new team members, transfer of knowledge in your organization, and you should give also people time to reflect on what have been developed to optimize actually, and not only to measure things with the metric speed.
Fantastic.
Yeah, this is my, and of course, I mean, I'm not saying that AI will replace humans. Actually, humans will be always there for the important things. For example, architectural decisions. For example, the specification of constraints, safety constraints, and so on. I think this is where humans will be needed in the next decades.
So Santosh, can you give some concrete examples of ways that you have, or your organization has leveraged AI to make things better, to improve things, or go faster?
Yeah, for sure. So one example, it was touched on earlier. I think Tamim touched on the opportunity we have in automotive with all of these tens of millions, hundreds of millions of vehicles and data, connected vehicles, right? And so we are leveraging AI to turn value out of that data, right? It's a large amount of data in any way you look at it. How do you drive insights out of that are actionable? Let's say in response to an issue. How do you look at vehicles in the field and identify maybe things that are going well and things that are not going well? And how do you quickly get to an insight of, what can you attribute that to? So we're leveraging AI in the diagnostic space to drive faster delivery of diagnostics, smarter diagnostics, more robust diagnostics. But we're also looking at AI as how do we actually speed up the development process. To the topic here, right? We're talking about the speed of development, but there's also the how fast can you speed up development?
Yeah.
And there we're seeing a big gain. So we're leveraging AI in our systems engineering to to produce not just faster, but more consistent, higher quality. We're using AI to even check, help humans check things so that we can ensure a certain level of quality. And I think there's just massive opportunity. And in fact, I've mentioned this to a few people that on Monday I attended the NVIDIA event, and Jensen Huang, presented some amazing stuff. And one of the things that he talked about was, their use of agentic AI and working with Mercedes and developing, a highly autonomous vehicle for production. And I think there's an opportunity here. I think it's front and center and here right now to even fundamentally reshape the way we think about product development. Because if I really look at it, I have really smart people in my organization, and if I think about the things that they do every day to develop product, and if you categorize what of those things are the same every time, even the decisions they make, they are logic based, there's a finite set of rules, they go through this, I think we'd be surprised how many of those could be learned, you could apply an agent that can look at that and reason. And I think there's a large amount of space opportunity.
Yeah, one thing Jensen said was where there's structure, you can deploy AI.
That's
what
right.
we're talking about is
That's
exactly
right. So,
the structure.
So, ingesting documentation, existing code bases, reference implementations, building intelligence around what does good look like, applying that, learning from that I think it's a very disruptive opportunity in shifting, our development velocity.
Hey, can you give us a concrete example from a platform perspective? Yeah.
Absolutely. I would like actually to piggyback on what Santosh and Tamim said. We have been looking at those tasks that are well-framed, that are highly repetitive, but also that are highly relying on trying and error, such as, for instance, hardware porting and these type of things. And for such type of tasks, we have seen that you can get to 5x to 10x, speed gains. It's really incredible, but as Tamim said, never without, senior supervision. Somebody needs to kind of, at the end, certify that the work has been made, properly. So that's where the human is still very much needed, but where you have significant benefits in terms of speed. And lastly, we have also seen in an interesting pilot project that obviously, and I was a former software developer engineer, people like to do great code, but sometimes less great documentation, right?
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. And so we found that if you kind of put in a pipeline your coding kind of infrastructure, your documentation infrastructure, and the right agents, well, you can walk through the code, walk through the documentation, figure out what was missed, what could be improved, what can be added, what should be reframed, and with that you can kind of retro-engineer your documentation. And I think this is greatly also helping the integrators and the developer experiences.
Fantastic. Well, we are absolutely out of time. There's more discussion we could have, so I urge everyone to pester them for the rest of the time at CES. Whenever you see them in the corridors, go ask them questions and find out more. It has been an absolute pleasure having you all join me today. Thank you so much, and thank you all for attending. Hope you have a great CES.
Thank you.
Thank you.